Moving on, we have here sine of 22.5, and we need to find the exact value. Now, when you have your sheet of identities, what you need to do in a case like this is go through and find an identity that works for you. Okay, here's a little bit of a hint. Especially when you have an angle that ends in 0.5, you know that you're supposed to use the half angle identities, right? So I'm not saying that only the 0.5s are going to be half angle, right? But all the 0.5s will be half angle. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So for sine of 22.5, you say, okay, 22.5, that's half of what angle?
50.
Not 50. If you double 22.5, that's 45. Right? So that's what you have to figure out first. 22.5 is half of 45. Okay, so now I go to my half angle identities, and that was the sine of 22.5, right? That means I need to use this one. Okay? So it's sine of theta over 2 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 1 minus cosine theta over 2, right? Okay, now, a couple of things here. This 45 that you came up with, this is the full angle theta. That means here, that angle is going to be the 45. Now, how do you figure out? So this is plus or minus, right? How are we going to know whether to use the plus or the minus? Okay, my original angle is 22.5, right? Original angle is 22.5. This is in quadrant 1. Is that right?
Yeah.
In quadrant 1, is sine positive or negative?
Everything's positive.
Everything is positive. Sine of theta is positive. Therefore, choose plus. So I choose the plus. All right? Okay? So if this was, let's say, sine of, like if this was cosine of 110.5, right? Then you would choose the negative. Okay? All right. So now let's go ahead and do this. So sine of 22.5 is equal to positive square root of 1 minus cosine of 45 over 2. Right? Okay, so common mistake. A student will want to make this cosine of 22.5. Well, now you're still, and then they're like, oh, it's a dead end, right? It dismisses the whole point. The whole point is that you need to convert it to something that you could do manually. Okay? Now, I know what cosine of 45 is. It's root 2 over 2. So this is the square root of 1 minus root 2 over 2 all over 2.
Wait, how is cosine root 2 over 2?
It's 1 over root 2 or root 2 over 2.
So it's negative.
What's cosine of 45? That's the
root 2.
1 over root 2. And then this is the rationalized version. In the other class, people are asking me to use the rationalized version. What do you guys prefer?
Rationalized.
Okay, it's the same as 1 over root 2.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do it that way too for you. Okay? Now that we have this, I need to simplify it. So now look, whatever the main denominator is, 2, okay? I can multiply everything by that.
Isn't it just 1/2 minus root 2 over 4?
Right, eventually, yeah. So now, this is going to be, what do we get on top? 2 minus, these go away, root 2 over 4. Okay, hang on, Ashley, I'll do it your way in a minute. Okay, so suppose here you didn't do the rationalized version and you did 1 over root 2 over 2. You still multiply by 2. Okay, so this one is going to be a little bit different, right? So you're going to get right? So what we want to do is we want to make this a common denominator.
So we do one of that.
So we want to do 2 root, okay, so common denominator here. 2 root 2 minus 2 all over 4. Here.
And then it's just root 2 over 4.
All right,
Oh, it's root 2 over 2.
I'll start again.
I get negative root 2 over 2.
Hang on. I'll start again. I'll do it in a more
Why
simple
did you get one from the
version.
bottom, though? I'm confused. Or that, because actually did another way.
Next one, right? So we have this. Next one, we have tangent of 112.5. Again, there is a 0.5. That's a dead giveaway. So, 112.5 is half of what angle? What is that the half of?
225.
225. Okay? So, that's going to be your angle theta. So now, we go to tangent of half angles. You can use any one of these, right?
They'll all work.
They'll all work. All right? Why don't we use the second one? 1 minus cosine over sine. This is equal to tangent of theta over 2. So, this angle here, the theta is going to be your 225. Okay?
Both of them.
Both of them.
Oh, okay.
So now, tangent of 112.5 is equal to 1 minus cosine of 225 over sine of 225. Okay, this is 1 minus, okay, let's figure out what cosine of 225 is. Where is 225?
Fourth quadrant. Oh no, it's the third quadrant.
It's the third quadrant,
It's in between 180.
right? It's the third quadrant. What's the reference angle? So if it's 180 until here, what's that leftover part?
Well, no, it's 360 minus 225.
Okay, no, here. It's 180 and then you go 45 more. So the reference angle is 45. Let's do that again. Think back to, okay, so look, we want 225. Here's 180. I go 45 more for this. So reference angle is 45, okay? Now, what's the cosine gonna be then? Root 2 over 2. But in that quadrant, is cosine positive or negative?
It's negative.
Negative.
But it's positive because it'll be
Right,
more important.
later. So the bottom here, we have sine of 225. Sine, again, of this is negative root 2 over 2.
Oh, because tangent is not.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it negative?
Because in that quadrant 3, sine and cosine are negative.
Oh, the tangent's positive.
It's okay because we're doing sine of 225.
Can you like cross those
No.
out?
You can't cross those out. So what we're going to do now is 1 plus root 2 over 2 over negative root 2 over 2. So now, what are we going to do here?
You can't cancel multiply by the reciprocal. So then multiply on each side, like the top and the bottom, to negative 2 over root 2.
Okay, so what is this here?
Oh, that's a.
Can we do a common denominator there?
Yeah.
Let's do that. 2 plus root 2 over 2.
You just like
Oh, I'm sorry.
2 over 2.
2 plus root 2 over 2 like this.
Okay.
Over negative root 2 over 2.
Now you can cancel out the bottom 2.
Now you can cancel out the bottom 2's. So this is 2 plus root 2 over negative 2.
Root 2. Root 2.
Negative root 2.
That's the answer.
Uh-huh.
Nice. Over there. What was the answer for example 3A?
Here.
The first part of that. Wait, can you go back down for 2 seconds? Sorry.
Okay, so for the next one, we have a whole new identity. Okay, so these are called product to sum identities. All right, so take a look at when we use these. We use these when you have, for example, sine of an angle times sine of a different angle. All right, that's when you use these. Sine of one angle times sine of another angle. Cosine of one angle times sine of another. Sine of an angle times cosine of a different angle. That's the thing. There is no tangent. These are the ones that you have. So if you have sine of alpha times sine of beta, sine of A times sine of B, that's what you plug it into. So take a look at what this says. It's product to sum, meaning you start with product multiplication, you end with addition or subtraction. Okay, so here it says to rewrite as a sum or difference. So if you want to end with a sum, and what are you starting with? Something times something. You're starting with a product, you want to end with a sum. That's product to sum, okay? So that's the biggest part of this quiz is, yeah, you have the whole identities. So which ones now are you going to use for each one, right? You have to match. When you have everything from the whole chapter, you have like so many options. You have to make sure that you match perfectly with what you have. Yeah. So I have cosine of one angle times cosine of a different angle. So here, if I label these 1, 2, 3, 4, that's number 2.
It would be the two bottom ones.
Right, it's number 2 here.
It would just be number 2.
Yeah.
Well, the other ones have sine.
Ariel.
When you give us these identities, will you say that this section is for product?
No.
You will not.
I mean, I'll just say like I'll give you the title.
What do you mean? What title?
Like it'll say product to sum identity.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so it's going to be half of cosine A minus B. So 6x minus 3x plus cosine 6x plus 3x. Okay, now simplify. Half of cosine 3x plus cosine 9x.
Hold on, what are you doing?
And that's it. That really is it. That's all you need to do.
That's it?
This one, you have sine times cosine. So that's going to be number 3. So it's going to be half of sine of the sum, half of sine of the sum, right? And plus sine of the difference. Right, except there's a little bit of action here. So this is half of sine of 7a plus sine of how much?
Negative 3.
Negative 3a. And it's that negative that has a little action, right? What happens when sine has a negative inside? What happens? It doesn't. Cosine is the one that engulfs it. Sine brings the negative out. So that's going to be half sine 7a minus sine 3a. And on the test or quiz, if you leave it like this second step, then you will not get the points for that last step. Okay? It will not be full credit.
So
Okay, so here what we have are sum to product identities, right? Okay, so here we're going to start with a sum and we're going to end with a product. But now, this is where students get confused sometimes because now this is a sum that sort of looks like what we had in section 4. So let's be careful exactly what it is that we're taking the sum of, right? Okay, so here I have, it has to look like this. Whoops. It has to look like this. Sine of an angle plus you have another sine of a different angle. Or minus, right. It could be sine plus sine, sine minus sine, or it could be cosine plus, cosine minus. Now, where does the confusion usually happen? If you remember back in section 4, we had sum and difference identities. What did those look like? What did those look like? I'll remind you. It looked like sine of A plus B. Okay, so do you see that? A lot of times, students will use one of the identities for this from section 4 for one of these. So what's the difference? What's the main difference here? Somebody, anybody, what's the main difference here?
Well, they're separated.
They're separated. How many functions are there here? There are 2 functions here. How many functions here? 1. You see that? So that's the main difference. Okay?
Is this where we even need a calculator?
Sometimes. So students sometimes want to have their calculator handy because you're gonna like add and subtract large-ish numbers. So let's take a look at what these look like. You're starting, like I said, with a sum, and then you have 2 times sine of something times cosine of something else. All right, so let's try to do one here. Let's try to do this one. So find the exact value of this. Okay, if I see this on the test, let's say you have something, you're going to have like problems from all of chapter 5. First, assess what you have. Okay, I have cosine of an angle plus another cosine of a separate angle. So that's one of these. Right, so if I label these again, 1, 2, 3, and 4, which one of these are we going to use?
3.
Right, okay, so let's use 3. Okay, so this is going to equal 2. There's a 2 up front times cosine. So now we have A plus B. So what plus what? What are we going to do here?
255 plus 195 all over 2.
Good. Times.
Cosine 255 minus 195 all over 2.
Right. So then there's lots of action here. Right, so how much is that? 450 over 2? You can use, this is where I want you guys to use your calculator so you can get the right answer at least. Okay, now look. The number you get here has to be an angle that shows up on the unit circle because you need to be able to do it mentally, right?
That does.
Yeah, it does, exactly. That's how you sort of know that you're on the right track. Okay, what about this one? Cosine of what here? Huh? 30? What do you guys think? 30? Yes?
Yeah.
All right, I see 30. All right. That's another one that's on the unit circle, guys. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, this is 2 times. All right. What about the cosine of 225?
Pi over 6. Pi over 3.
One more. Pi over 4, right? Pi over 4. What quadrant is it in?
It's in 3.
It's in the 3rd quadrant. So is cosine positive or negative there? Negative. So what value is that going to have?
Negative.
Right, but then the number, how much? What's cosine of 225?
Negative.
Yeah.
2 over 2. Wait.
Okay, so this, you're going to do the triangles on the unit circle. We're doing cosine of 225, right? That's the 45-degree reference angle. That's the one. Okay, so 1 over root 2.
You can't do root 2 over 2.
You can do root 2 over 2. Remember, we've now like graduated. You could either rationalize or not. Okay, so then cosine of 30, we know this one. What's cosine of 30?
Root 3 over 2.
I have a root 3 over 2. I'm going to go with root 3 over 2 because...
6 is
Okay, it's okay. We don't have to talk because we can do math. So now, Okay, here it is. Here's another pitfall usually that that I see for students. This 2 here can cancel, right? But which of these denominators will it cancel with?
The second.
The second one, right? So you have a 2, it must cancel with an identical 2 on the bottom. So now you have,
Or you could can you just multiply it through?
you can multiply it through, but then you still have to reduce.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
All right. Now, I multiply the numerators, I get negative root 3 on top, and what do I get on the bottom?
Root 2.
Okay.
Oh.
Can you rationalize if you want to?
Yeah, what's the point?
There is no point because we no longer use the slide rule, so I guess it's okay, we can leave it this way. Okay, now this next one. Okay, this is sort of a trick question because I told you before that the 0.5s are an indication that you want to use half angles. However, is that what we're going to do here? Are we going to do a half angle here? What are we going to do here? Yeah.
Because we are using the sum to product identity. There's no point in throwing it into that.
Right.
Because it'll just work itself out.
Right, it'll work itself out. So what I do here is I say, okay, what is it that I have? Okay, I have this 3 here, fine. But then I have cosine of an angle times cosine of a different angle. And then I say to myself, oh my gosh, is there an identity that looks just like this? Cosine of an angle times cosine of a different angle. Let's see, is there anyone here?
What? Number 3?
Number 3, okay, so is that cosine times another cosine?
My bad. It isn't.
It's not on this one.
It's in this
It's
one.
Number 3 on that one. No, it's not.
It's one of them
Number 2.
here. It's number 2. Okay? So now we have to do some flipping back and forth. So it's half of cosine of the difference plus cosine of the sum. So let's see. We have the 3 here. Okay? We can't let go of that. Times half of, what was it? Cosine of the sum?
No, that's what the difference is.
That was the difference. You got amnesia there. Okay. Cosine of the difference.
Oh, because then you won't get halves.
It works out so beautifully, right? It has to come up. It has to come to like an angle on the unit circle. Remember? So plus cosine of the sum. It makes it so much easier if you have it all on one sheet. Okay.
Do you want to give it to you?
Who, me?
Like the,
It's okay. You can give it to me.
It's negative 150.
Okay. Some more action here. Negative 150 plus. What do you guys think? Do we agree that it's 225? Yes?
Yeah.
Are we agreeing? What if, okay, so what if you forgot your calculator?
Yeah, then you're screwed.
Then you're not. Then you would add them.
Back to 4th grade math.
Back to 4th grade math. Well, it's actually 3rd grade math. My son is doing this stuff now. Huh? Oh.
Yeah, I forgot all my quizzes.
Okay, what's with the negative here? What's going to happen? It's cosine of negative
It
150.
goes away. It goes away.
It goes away. The cosine will engulf the negative, right?
It's so easy.
So cosine of 150. So here's why I love this lesson. Because what we're going to do next, right? So these 2 steps and on is from chapter 4. We're now in chapter 5, but it's so close to the final that you need to review chapter 4 anyway. So this is like this all-encompassing lesson, and it just puts everything together. So if you are kind of getting weak on the chapter 4 stuff, this is a good way to remember, and it's a good call, right? It's a good wake-up call that you need to like review all that unit circle stuff. Okay, so this is 3/2. What about that one? Cosine of 150. What do we think?
Its reference angle is 60.
So what quadrant is this in?
3.
No,
I have a
No,
3. It's 2. Reference angle is 30. And now I want the cosine. I feel like we just did the cosine of 30. Negative root 3 over 2. plus what? Cosine of 225, we've been doing that all day. I'll ruin it for you. It's negative 1 over root 2. I'm sorry. Okay? So now, I'm actually okay with this answer.
Yay.
I am.
Um,
If you rationalize, sorry to cut you off, if you rationalize and you did root 2 over 2, it's easier to combine. But at this point, I'm okay with this answer. I want to focus on these. Yes.
For the answer, I put I put a minus sign where there's a plus sign and just drop the negative.
That's totally fine with me. This. Yes. Okay. Okay, so this, you're going to do this one together on your own. But first, let's decide which identity we're going to use together. And then I'll... Number 4 on which one? Is it sum to product or product to sum? Sum to product. And it's cosine minus cosine, so it's number 4. This one's a bit of a doozy because you've got all these like radians, right? So you're going to have fractions over fractions. Okay, I'll pause this for a minute. When you do the combining, you end with something, you end with this. Actually, this is a pi over 3, not a 2 pi over 3. So 2 sine pi over 3 times sine pi over 4. This is negative 2 sine of pi over 3 root 3 over 2. Sine of pi over 4 1 over root 2.
We got it right.
Oh, we did. I got that right.
Oh my god, we actually
Okay,
got it right.
now this 2 cancels with this 2.
What are you gonna
Negative root 3 over root 2.
wait?
Okay?
Oh, okay, I see.
So that's that one. Okay, last but not least.
Negative root 3 over what?
Not close enough.
Here. Okay. I have a 2 and I have a 2. What am I going to do with those 2's? Okay, so we can't just divide it out because it's not an equation, but I can factor it out. And now I have a sum to product again, right? So I have a sum to product, and it's cosine plus another cosine.
So it's sum to product number 3.
So, okay, yes. So now I have a 2 here, that stays, times the identity itself has another 2 that I put in here. Then I have cosine of a plus b over 2, cosine of a minus b over 2. Yes? This is 4 cosine of, okay, 105 plus 195. So you add the 5, that's 200.
300.
300 over 2 is 150 times cosine 105 minus 195. They're 90 apart from each other.
So negative 90.
Over 2, negative 45. Again, with that negative, what happens with that negative?
Cosine swallow.
Cosine engulfs it.
Yeah, man.
So I have 4 cosine 150. I feel like we just did that. Negative root 3 over 2. So times 1 over root 2. And here's a little bit of advice. If you did like cosine of 150 on the test, and you feel like you feel confident, like go and refer back to it. The only downside to that is if you did it wrong one time and you keep using the same thing, that's not cool. So be careful.
Negative 4 root 3 over.
So this and this gives me a 2. Okay, what do I have on top? What do we have upstairs in the numerator?
Negative
2 minus root 3.
Okay, so they're being multiplied.
Root 2
So
root
it's
3.
negative 2 root 3
Oh.
over root 2.
What?
Okay.
Upstairs, I have 2 times negative root 3.
Let's get this one started.
Okay, so that's that. So this will be due tomorrow. Tomorrow, here's what we're going to do. We're going to review. Your quiz is Thursday.